What was that?
Perfect. You want to be that guy? Wow.
Good morning.
Good morning.
PCTV. Hope you guys had a great weekend. It is Monday, January 16th, 2023.
Oh yeah.
It's the 6th. I know.
Damn, that's
what I said. I said before we went live, I was like, I can't believe it's mid-January all the way. It's unbelievable. But we got Jaime off to my left. We got Tamp off to my right. Guys, actually, no, she's on my left. She's left for me.
Who knows?
Whatever. Tamp, what's up? How was your weekend?
Not much, man. It was good. Good weekend. Yesterday was a true lazy Sunday. I haven't had a lazy Sunday in forever. I watched an entire binged Vikings Valhalla season, like the whole thing.
Nice.
I'm sure Lord Fenver was happy about that.
Oh yeah. Like I think I'm running out of Viking shows. I think I've watched them all.
So did you watch any football yesterday?
I watched some. Yeah. NFL isn't as fun to me as college. I'm like all bummed now that college ball's done.
I know, but there was some really awesome. There's some really crazy upsets over the weekend.
Yeah, I watched New York, Minnesota. I did watch that. That was a good game.
Minnesota was
I don't know why I watched that game.
Probably the shittiest 13-3 team of all time.
13-3, Jesus.
I would imagine. Yeah. And then you had Trevor Lawrence coming in and winning.
Yeah, he killed it.
I mean, and the Ravens, God. They should have won the game. They were the better team last night, but then ended up blowing it.
How bad?
Well, they only lost 24-17, but the thing of it is that the quarterback, Tyler Huntley, is a backup quarterback for the Ravens. They were on the 1 yard line, and he reaches over to put the ball across the line, and one of the Bengals defenders knocks it out of his hand, picks it up, runs 98 yards for a touchdown, and that's how the game basically ends.
Yeah, guys that don't tote the rock very often, they do not understand. I don't care if you're in the league or not. For some reason, they don't understand. You can't do that unless you're used to holding the ball like that and getting hit. They're just like, oh, well, I see other guys do it. Like, stop.
And he wasn't even close. Like, I think the Amazon Analytics or whatever said he was like 0.6 yards away from that. So, like, he wasn't even like he was close to do that, right? Like, if you're right up on it, fine, but like you're not even close. So yeah, it was a heartbreaker.
Especially when
it is what it is.
Yep.
Well, it is what Meanwhile, Bitcoin's going pretty good.
Speaking of which, we do have some things to talk about today, guys. First of all, we appreciate you hanging in with us. Make sure you hit that thumbs up if you're just tuning in. If you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome, and make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. We appreciate it. And we're going to be talking about basically Bitcoin just all day.
Absolutely.
We have a couple of other things that we're going to chat about, such as Anthony Scaramucci seeing Bitcoin to $100,000. And the former president of FTX shares his experiences with Sam Bankman-Fried. But then we're also just going to really kind of focus in on Bitcoin itself and where it's headed. And can we accurately determine that this is potentially the bottom, or that we actually did see the bottom? What are some scenarios in which we would see some sort of capitulatory moment? Maybe it goes down even lower than what we've saw back late last year, or is this it, or is it up from here? So we're going to be having those conversations. I'm looking at the overall market right now. I don't know why. I was just like lackadaisy today, just not exactly the most prepared. The markets are closed today because of MLK Day. It's probably why I'm just like all over the place. But Bitcoin is up. It's up around 0.5%. It's at 20,840, and it was up as high as 21,000 and some change over the weekend. And so, Jaime, I wanted to kind of give you the floor so you can show everybody the charts, and then we can kind of get into some discussions as to what's going on here with Bitcoin, and what can we expect in the near future, and maybe for the rest of the year, perhaps.
So I wanted to start with your gut feeling, Tamp and Brad, in terms of just looking at it at this very moment, just off the air. You don't have to go into the details. How do you feel about this pump up? if we zoom in in the chart itself, and now this is the Bitcoin halving chart. We've had this chart up since we began the show.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And Brad was even mentioning this double top was quite obvious. And now we're down here. And please take a look at how Bitcoin has acted during the bottom of the growth S curve, like beautifully tapped it, stayed on it. And now all of a sudden we have this pump. And this pump went right up to the point of the FTX collapse. So I don't know if you've heard of the BART formation or the BART
BART pattern.
The BART pattern where if you put it upside down, that's a BART pattern. Yeah. So the big question is, usually it reverses violently. So that's what we want to determine. Is the bottom in? Your first gut reaction, Tam. How do you feel about this? And we're not going to hold you to it.
You're painting me in a corner, but I do think that we are in a bull run. At this point, I think that we have started the 750 plus days of bull activity. Now that doesn't mean that the price can't go down as well and even, tap lower. But if we, pull way back starting from this point forward, say in a year or two, I think we've started the bull market.
Beautiful. I'm with you 100%, Tam. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think, now that's a totally different question than have we hit the bottom, like are the lowest lows in. I think we can definitely go back and tap a bottom or two as well. I don't think that's out of the question. I think that will become very less likely, as we hit March and especially get through March. I think once March comes and goes, I think we're really done. There's no more low tapping at that point. But until we get there, I do think there's a possibility we could still tap a low, but also be in a bull market condition.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to save the bulk of this conversation for after WTF, but
okay.
It certainly feels promising. And I touched on this on Friday that whenever you're kind of either flirting or have determined that we're in or going into a deep recession or a recession in general, it's usually that the markets do well whenever Main Street's feeling it. And so I think that this year could be a really tough year for consumers, for Main Street in general. But if Bitcoin is has any relation to the overall market from a macro perspective, I would imagine that it is also forward looking and in the same way that the traditional markets are. So I would expect there to actually be some pretty decent bullish activity in the markets in general, but also if Bitcoin follows that pattern as well, which it seems as if it's going to, that we could actually see some pretty decent moves in 2023 leading into the next halving of Bitcoin.
Beautiful. Appreciate that, guys. That gives us a big go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to expand on this in after our WTF news of the day, but that's my little teaser for later on. I love it,
guys. Thank you. So now let me just jump into this. So macro, we are where we need to be.
Yeah.
If you're looking at this and the uptrend, the median, this is the median that has dictated Bitcoin's history quite well. But if you notice, it doesn't follow it precisely, in markets. But yes, it usually tends to snap towards the median every single time.
Yep.
And in this case, we had a double top, which my question is also, okay, could this be a double at this moment? If we do not continue up, that's what we're going to look at this to see, will there be a capitulation or not? So let me move to the large macro trend. So what I'm watching now, let me get to the greedy one. The greedy one, the daily that you see on Twitter, you see everyone like, guys, we're above the 200 moving average. We're going to be rich. It's the bull runs here already. That's usually the trend. As long as Bitcoin stays above the 200 moving average, usually it's a sign of the return of the market itself.
We haven't seen it above the 200-day moving average since 2021.
Right here, when we broke down, was December 28th, 2021. was the last time we were above the 200-day moving average. So now we broke through it. And the idea, guys, in traditional analysis is we should come back to test this 200 moving average as support.
Yes.
To prove it.
Right.
Is it going to hold or not?
Mm-hmm.
If it holds, and in my case, I maybe always buy at support, guys. Never buy into resistance is one rule, and vice versa the other way. So in this case, I'm looking for a retest of 19,500 range at some point. So don't see. Okay.
I talked to Satoshi, the Bitcoin CEO. He said October. What does this mean?
Okay, sweet Lord. Okay, I'll jump onto that afterwards. So in this case, you will see 19,600 is the spot I'm looking for Bitcoin to test on the daily. If it comes and tests it as support, at that point, I'm like, okay, guys, now
feeling better about it.
I'm feeling better about it. I'm not saying everyone jump in or do anything crazy,
right.
But I personally would be, and not financial advice in the end. So that's looking at it on the short term. So I'm looking for that at this moment. And as you can see, Bitcoin is really extended on the stochastic RSI. We haven't seen that since, this level around January 2021.
Yep.
So there's a couple of pieces that are aligning to this view. Now, if we move to the weekly, now I'm moving upwards, guys. The monthly is where I'm going to give you the reallys that I'm watching for us. So we broke above these two levels, these two resistance points. The important one is this one, the 19,100 level, because that served as support for a while.
Yeah, you and I talked about that over the weekend.
Correct. Absolutely. And the crossover, the death cross on the weekly is not something to toy with. The only way we could invalidate this is if price action closed above, where you can see almost like a fake out, a curve above this. We don't know. I mean, now we just got to watch. But I would be concerned if it does, because this could be an overthrow, where it breaks back down on below, and a lot of people FOMO in, and that's how you trap your traders at that moment. So you have to be very careful with this one, if you jump in too quickly. So we wait for confirmation, but at this moment, I would not be surprised if the bottom is in. Again, in full transparency, I still have buys way down there. Hopefully we get there, but I have to adjust my sales as the market tells us what it's going to do. Now, let's go to the monthly. This is the one that really will tell me where the change is, if we're going to shift. So on the monthly, each one of these candles is a monthly candle. So we broke down all the way to below the 50 moving average, went back up, used this entire region as support for 6 months. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And on the 6th month, we came down. Last month, we couldn't even come back up. This month, January, boom, we're rallying right up to that top, which is where the bear market, this possible capitulation was triggered, which was the FTX meltdown.
Right.
There's a lot of factors which we'll consider afterwards that we're going to look at, but here's what I'm looking at for me to say, guys, we're good. Let's go. Is if one, we can close above this blue box, this blue zone, which stands currently at 21,400. Is the first step.
It
above.
Literally went all the way up to that, to the cent.
Yes, guys,
of that resistance
it's
just over the weekend. That's what happened. That was crazy. For it to see it go all the way up to that almost dollar.
Absolutely.
Resistance.
So this month, and we have all the way to the end of January, guys.
That's
and
right.
Then the week into February, we have the death cross on the weekly. So there's a couple of ceilings that we're looking at. The weekly death cross in this region, we're looking at this level to break it. And the important one, that's why I marked in red, is the 50 monthly moving average. Will we go up there and tap it to confirm it as resistance? and then do our capitulation, whatever we need? Or will it break and hold that support? If we hold that support, guys, my thesis changes at that point.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. I don't know if there's any questions, and I'll answer that October 1 deeper into our conversations today.
Yeah, absolutely. Always appreciate the technical breakdown, my man. And if you guys are just joining us, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're enjoying the stream so far, we certainly would appreciate that like button to get pushed as well. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's very little effort. Just to push the like button helps show support. We certainly would appreciate it. Also, make sure you check us out in the link down below in our Discord, and continue to help us grow our community that way too. If you want to continue these conversations about where Bitcoin is headed, have we reached the bottom? Have we not? Make sure you go check us out in our Discord. We'd love to continue that conversation with you there, and many other folks in our community that help us build things and grow things as Bitcoin continues to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And, I mean, we talk about all kinds of shit in there, but
enjoy the rides, everyone.
yeah, that's right. So getting on to our WTF of the day. So there is some really interesting news. This is our WTF news of the day. If you guys are new to the channel, we just like to break it up, talk about some crazy things that are happening in the world. And this was something that Brandon, I'm sad that Brandon's not here. He didn't even let us know he wasn't going to show up today. No call, no show. Usually that's grounds for firing, but I guess we'll show him some grace today. So a UK team has bred more than 1.4 million frogs in an effort to build a, quote, frog army. TikTok user Thin Frog says he started the project by collecting more than 1 million frog eggs and hatching them in the backyard swimming pool. He says, quote, I wanted to create the largest frog army in history. He said in an uploaded video, and I'll share the TikTok in just a second. So next year, I will create a giant pond for 10 million frogs. And he adds a number of tiny amphibians have already hopped away, spreading across the neighborhood. I'm trying to understand the point of this, but it's actually pretty insane. The photos have just been wild. Thoughts on this real quick?
Yeah, I mean, this is not good. Like, why? Because he can, right? He can, but once you see the video, this is the problem. Like, this guy's in a suburban area. It's not like he's in a rural area. So he literally lets 1 million frogs grow in his backyard that, of course, then just leave and go who knows where. But like, if I'm your neighbor, I'm not okay. And all this is going to do is start like a new TikTok challenge where next thing you know, somebody's going to be doing ladybugs, and then who knows, rats, and then rabbits, and who knows what else. And you have literal neighborhoods that are going to be infested with, grass snakes or whatever else. And I don't even know what this would do to the larger ecosystem of birds and insects and everything else. I don't think this is good. I think this sets a really bad challenge precedent.
Now, I'll give you this though. I have family who work for a chemical and pharmaceutical company. And one of the there were insecticides involved. The canary in the coal mine for ecosystems are really frogs. They are very sensitive to the chemicals in the soil.
Oh, wow.
So if these frogs end up dying within a couple of months, there's something going on more serious in that community. So if he could actually ship these to areas where there was a collapse in the ecosystem, because frogs are the ones that eat the mosquitoes. They're the ones that actually cleanse the ecosystem.
Yeah, but there's got to be some sort of consequence of overpopulating.
Too much.
Yeah.
1.5 million in your suburban backyard just because you want a nasty pool.
We're kind of sounding like Bill Gates and the overpopulation of the earth, guys.
Well, damn, it's not like you've ever been to like a puppy farm that's not in a disgusting hoarder house, right? And these are the last people you want, doing anything like this, especially as your next door neighbors. And all I know is that if this guy was able to do this in your nasty pool, odds are the rest of your life is pretty nasty as well. And you have no business. Like, you have no business. And like I said, somebody's going to make the next, who knows, ladybug farm or whatever, and you're going to have all kind of weird stuff coming out of people's yards. All this is going to do is cause municipalities to pass laws saying you can't do this.
So an Arizona biologist by the name of Tierra Curry says that Thin Frog, the guy who's putting these up on his TikToks, his efforts could spell disaster for the frogs. He said, especially once other TikTok users start imitating him, as you were saying. Actually,
Yeah.
quote, it makes me cringe. Instead of helping, they're actually hurting the animals they're releasing, and all the animals in the environment that they're releasing them into. It's creating a vector for disease and invasive species, which I didn't even think about the invasive species part.
Yeah.
Are these invasive for that area? Do you
I'm
know?
not sure.
No.
Yeah, the article didn't say, but I mean,
Now the birds are going to have a lot of food.
yeah.
This is a lot of food for birds, guys.
When you start messing with the ecosystem, man,
Yeah,
it
agreed.
always ends up being a big problem. I mean, here in the Carolina area and even in Maryland, where I'm from, I remember like when stink bugs really started to kind of like go nuts, and now we can't get rid of them. They're not native to the area.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
destroying, and there's no actual natural predators here, so they just keep
Exactly.
multiplying and going nuts.
That's lantern flies here in PA. Lantern flies like
Yeah.
come out in droves like stink bugs. You're like, where did this come from?
Yeah, or those beetles that are wreaking havoc.
Yep.
Lord
Exactly.
Fenner,
Anyways.
DCTV stance is fuck the frogs. 100%.
Yep. The end. Time to move on from frogs.
Game over.
Damn.
Guys, thanks for being a part of our WTF news of the day. If you guys aren't privy to our normal live streams, that's what we do. We kind of break it up a little bit, break up the Bitcoin conversation, and just kind of give you something that's going on crazy in the world. There's always some crazy shit. I'm never at a loss for WTF news. Every time we go live, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the link down in the description below if you want to continue our conversation about frogs in our DCTV Discord. It's absolutely free to join. We'd appreciate it if you help us grow our community in that way. All right, so moving on. You guys saw the title of today's show. Anthony Scaramucci sees Bitcoin at 50,000 to 100,000 in the next 2 to 3 years as the market hopes for, or as he hopes for a market bull run. And so if you guys aren't familiar with Anthony Scaramucci, he worked at Goldman Sachs for quite a long time, since 1989, ended up starting his own firm. You guys might know him. You might be familiar with him as he was also a White House communications director under the Trump administration for a little bit. But he is also a big time Bitcoin supporter. I would venture to say he's more or less a Bitcoin maxi, probably not to the definition of what a Bitcoin maxi actually is, but he rarely talks about anything else other than Bitcoin, and has always been super bullish on it, and has been a regular correspondent on CNBC talking about Bitcoin. He's kind of their guy whenever they want to talk about this topic, and he's talking about $100,000 Bitcoin over the next we'll say 2 to 3 years is what he's predicting. He says, I think, quote, that there's a little bit more downside, but I don't think that there's going to be a lot. And then that there's a chance that it's potentially bottomed from here. Kind of similar to what we've been talking about. And I kind of wanted to go over this topic myself. From a traditional markets perspective, I think that there is a potential argument to be made that Bitcoin has bottomed. And the reason I say this is because when we talked about, well, we hadn't even met each other then, but in during the pandemic, and when we saw the Fed starting to cut rates, and we saw, obviously liquidity all over the place during that time, that's when Bitcoin really started to make its move. And some people make the argument, well, that was because, we had stimulus checks and everybody's taking their stimmy checks and just throwing in a Bitcoin. And yes, there is some truth to that. But when we see deflation take place, that's when Bitcoin has actually made a lot of its moves as well. So from a macro perspective in the traditional markets, we're kind of starting to see that now. Inflation has come down, is coming down. I'm not saying that it's back to normal, because it's not. But, we're continually seeing CPI. CPI just got reported last week for the month of December, came in lower than expectations. Yet again, it's been steadily coming down since June. And so I think that we're going to start to hear a little bit more of a dovish tone from the Fed. At least I think we should. I think maybe I'm not going to be concerned about another quarter or half a point rate increase from them this month or even next month. But I think that we're going to start to see a little bit more, I don't want to say of a pivot, but a softening from the Fed. And if that happens, that means that the dollar should start to get a little bit weaker. And when that takes place, then we start to see Bitcoin start to move back up. So if this trend continues, which is what seems to be likely, then I think then we can make the argument that Bitcoin has potentially bottomed and that we could start to get really bullish, not just on the overall market, but also with cryptocurrencies as well. It seems as if Bitcoin follows this trajectory of, when the Federal Reserve and we're seeing disinflation or deflation take place, that Bitcoin ends up having pretty decent run. So I think that if you're looking at it from a traditional market standpoint and how traditional markets influence Bitcoin, I think that this is a solid argument that you could probably make moving forward into the rest of the year. And I made this argument here on Friday about how I think the markets actually end up having a good year, not because Main Street's going to do well this year, but just because of the forward trajectory and
forward looking.
Thank you. That we see from the markets in general. Look at 2009, right? Everybody on Main Street was feeling it. They were losing their house. They were losing their job. Nobody could afford shit. But the market itself, the stock market, had a 19% year that year. I believe 19 or 20%.
Very good year.
Yeah. And that was in the previous year, where 2008, the end of 2008, obviously people were starting to feel that recession. We saw the stock market crash towards the end of 2008. It had a terrible year. Main Street was really feeling it in 2009, but the stock market itself had a huge bounce back and really did pretty well after that.
Exactly.
So I think that this is kind of where we're at, not comparing it to the 2008 recession at all. But if we are in a recession, it seems likely that we are, then the markets actually do well when Main Street isn't. I know it seems kind of counterintuitive, but that's usually what takes place.
How are we lowering interest rates and having all these good forward projections when Janet Yellen just came out and said the U.S. is about to default on their loans in July?
They talk about that all the time. They're not going to default.
No, but it's just like, are you speaking out of both sides of your ass? I mean, in one case you're saying, oh, well, inflation's going down, we're good, soft landing, all the buzzwords you want. And on the other hand, she's like, oh, if we don't change something big time, the U.S. is going to default on all their debts by July. I mean, which one is it?
So I want to be clear. I'm not saying that we are in for a soft landing, and I still say that Main Street, people like you and me, the consumer, is not going to have a great year. But looking at it from a stock market perspective, the markets themselves are looking to 2024 already, and they're expecting 2024 to be that kind of recovery year for Main Street. So if you're already expecting that, and you're already expecting the Fed. I'm not even saying the Fed's going to cut rates this year, but if they just stop raising them, then I think there is going to be some sort of relief felt. And that's where a lot of the institutions and smart money, quote unquote, is starting to see that writing on the wall. Janet Yellen, she's going to say what she's going to say. She's hasn't been right about a lot of things, and neither has the Fed, to be honest. I mean, inflation was supposed to be transitory, and here we are over a year later, and still dealing with high inflation, even though it has come down. It's still there. But I think you bring up some good points, Tamp. But at the end of the day, the markets themselves are looking already to January of 24, and that's why you're starting to see the movement in the markets as they are. I mean, the S&P I think is up already 4% this year.
Right.
And we're only 2 weeks in.
Has it broken in above the 21 moving average? Do you remember?
No, not yet.
Okay.
But I think we're going to get close to that here real soon.
So that's what I'm watching is, are we going to tap that?
Yeah.
And cross it, or continue?
Definitely tapping that.
There he is.
Listen, you can't just fly in and start talking shit, man.
So, but in line with what you just mentioned, if we look at looking forward statements, look at Bitcoin's trajectory at this moment.
Yep.
The median on the growth S curve is up. So the big question is, how far and how quickly do we rise with this? And he said about 2 years, Scaramucci said?
Yeah, within the next 2 to 3 years, he thinks that we'll see $100,000 Bitcoin.
So if you look at this, the next apex is scheduled to be around June 2025, which is on schedule, guys. And where is that range? It's about $148,000. So he is within, I think he's using the same goddamn chart.
He might be.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. He's just following the same chart that everybody else is looking at. He's not calling an exact price. It's like a horoscope, right? Where you're like, man, horoscope really nailed it for me, on my Leo or my ever. But if you look at it, it's like, oh, well, you're this type of person, but then there'll be 2 or 3 sentences on the back end that catch all the opposite direction too. Yeah, where most of it is right, but then they said this one thing that was really way off. But I'm just going to not, pay attention to that one. I'll ignore that. And this is the same thing. It's like your cable guy saying, well, we're going to be here today. Okay, cool, great. When? Well, between 8 and 5. And you're like, well, what did you really tell me? Like, you didn't tell me anything that we don't already know.
Right.
So thanks, Scaramucci, for being the weatherman and saying that it's very likely it's going to rain, but if it doesn't, that's right too. Like,
right. No, but
I don't really think you told me anything.
Let me one phrase you use, not a horoscope, more of a farmer's almanac. Let's put it that.
Thank you.
Tis winter right now down here. It is summer way over there on the 2025. So
exactly.
But
that's my point.
Absolutely. So
I've been saying this. You don't need Scaramucci or anybody else to tell you what we've been telling you, which is why we tell you to DCA constantly, especially in times like these, where we don't know if the bottom's in yet, but it very well might be. And when we go parabolic, it's going to be fast, violent, and you're going to sit here, shoulda, woulda, coulda, I wish I would have got more at 14, blah, blah, blah. That's what we've been telling you to DCA.
Yes.
That's why we tell you to do this, because Scaramucci is not some kind of savant that knows something, right? Like, don't wait for him or the government or anybody else to tell you anything. DCA through all of this stuff. Why? Because we've been through it 100 times over, and it's not random. Like, we're following charts. We're following the entire purpose of Bitcoin. We're following true supply and demand. Now, I get it. There's market makers within that, but if you get rid of all the FUD, you get rid of all the noise, and you just cycle in what Bitcoin is supposed to do in the halving cycles, you will get a good idea of when your seasons are. And they are just as true as the ones we experience when you walk outside.
Well, to add to that, Tim.
Financial advice.
Yes. Well said. And thank you, Gundy.
To add to that, Tamp, there's a lot of people that are probably already asking the question, oh, well, Bitcoin's already gone up 25, 30% from its bottom. I mean, I missed it. Did I miss the bottom? Like, who cares? Yeah. Even if you bought it right now,
yes,
and it keeps going, then and that $100,000 mark becomes a reality. That's 500% from now.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Like,
welcome to the show. That's crypto, and Don would tell you too. In this space, 5-10% swings, that's regular, that's normal. This space is really used to 35-45% swings, not only just on the daily, but like especially on the weekly. You go to the monthly, you can have 60+% swings.
Yes.
That is this space. Like, you're not telling all the OGs in this space anything we don't already know. You can't say, oh, well, 20-25%, that's you in your traditional finance frame. Like, in this world, that's normal. So Scaramucci and anybody else isn't telling, Bitcoin people what they don't already know.
Absolutely. But just in case, Scaramucci, like and subscribe, brother. Like and subscribe if you're watching us.
Yeah, to be fair to Anthony Scaramucci, he's been a huge supporter of Bitcoin, and I think he tries to create more adoption for people. So we're not poo-pooing on him.
Yeah,
at least I don't think we are, but just a heads up for that. We're just trying to say he's not the end all be all, and he's basically
right.
the same thing that we've been saying.
Yeah, and he's bullish.
Yeah.
He's been a big fan of Bitcoin and DCTV, so we'll send you one of the hoodies when we start making those soon.
The birthdays are his favorite,
which is all good. But just don't expect somebody in a suit or on TV or in the government with a fancy alphabet suit behind their name to know something that we haven't been preaching this whole time. Like, don't rely on somebody like that to tell you something when you can research this stuff yourself even and just start understanding it, and you'll very quickly see, oh man, I already knew that. They're not telling me anything I don't know. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Like, no one's going to save you. Like, we're here to help and guide, but you can't be mad and be like, oh, I should have listened, when Scaramucci said something. No, just DCA and you're fine. And you'll filter out the noise.
Absolutely. Excellent. Great advice.
Hi, Brandon.
Shalom.
Good to see you.
Yeah. It's 9 o'clock somewhere.
Hope you slept well.
Yeah, I didn't.
For those of you who are new, welcome to the show, Brandon, aka At the Real Data Lord. He is another piece of our DCTV puzzle. Yes, hit that like button. We certainly would appreciate it, guys. If you're enjoying the stream so far, and if you're not subscribed, we encourage you to do so. We do this every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. We go live and talk about all the things that are going on in the crypto space. And today, obviously, we've seen such a huge move in Bitcoin starting on Friday to today. It's taking a little bit of a pullback, but so far it's been holding up rather well. We'll see what the rest of the week brings. But that's today's topic in general. Hit that the link in the description as well if you guys want to continue our conversations there after today's stream. That is our free Discord. We would appreciate it if you help us grow our community in that way. All right. One thing I wanted to talk, another thing I wanted to talk about was this big old nerd. Let me. Here we go. This guy right here is kind of nerdy looking. Yeah, show you guys. But he is actually somebody pretty important.
Yes.
Or significant, I should say. He was a former, his name is Brett Harrison. He was a former president.
See his shirt.
Of FTX. Yeah, right.
Mhm.
And
for this US.
the
side.
FTX
Yes.
US, yes.
Yes.
Just to
Very
clarify.
different. Yeah.
So, as former president of FTX US, and he was sharing his experiences in relationship with Sam Bankman-Fried in a detailed Twitter thread. If you guys didn't catch the Twitter thread, go ahead. You can go ahead and check that out for yourself. But he put a 49-part Twitter thread. There's got to be a better way to 40. I'm not committing that kind of time. I'm not putting 49 threads up or 49 tweets up to make a thread. Like, what's the point of that? Like, there's got to be a better way to do it. Just make a goddamn video, for Christ's sake.
This is called CYA.
I know that.
CYA.
Okay, then script it out, make a video, and then be on with your day.
Yeah, it's
Instead of
true.
making
It's not
49.
efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not reading that. Anyway, before his role at FTX US, Harrison worked with SBF and Jane Street, and prior to joining FTX, he worked with for Citadel Securities, which, as you know, that is Sam Bankman-Fried's background as well, with Alameda being the market maker. And it says in a Twitter thread, the former president of the U.S. subsidiary explained that his relationship with Sam Bankman-Fried and his deputies had reached to a point of deterioration after months of disputes over management practices at FTX. I can only imagine that it probably had a lot to do with the fact that they didn't have a CFO. He said his experience working at FTX US. Initially, he was excited to join the company, but over time, his relationship with SBF just kind of went south. 6 months into his time at the company, he pronounced cracks began to form in his relationship with Sam, and around then, he began advocating strongly for establishing separation and independence for the executive, legal, and developer teams of FTX US. And Sam Bankman-Fried actually disagreed. I think this, after kind of watching what if you guys didn't catch the Bernie Madoff documentary on Netflix, I would highly encourage you to watch this. This is where Sam Bankman-Fried fucked up his Ponzi scheme by making it all by not compartmentalizing. If you guys didn't catch the Bernie Madoff, he kept it completely separate. The Ponzi scheme was completely separate from his market making business, and there was like all these people that had no idea what was going on within the company, which made it even messier for investigators.
He
But
even had visit from the CFTC and the
and the SEC and all that, like all underneath their noses. But Sam Bankman-Fried just put it all together, and you could probably make the comparison that SBF and Bernie Madoff are pretty close. Like, these stories are pretty close to the same, but Bernie Madoff was just way better at it. SBF was actually pretty terrible.
He's a millennial.
I would almost say he's
not thorough.
Yeah. He's a late millennial.
Yeah.
But thoughts on this? I mean, I know that we've kind of beaten the SBF FTX thing to death, but
I didn't read this tweet thread. What does he say? That SBF sucked, or that he was a good guy? I mean, what did he say?
He was having issues with SBF. Like, he started having communication, because imagine he's on the state side where it's regulatory bodies, where laws can be enforced on his ass.
Yeah.
Versus Sam Bankman-Fried, who was out in the Bahamas under different regulatory.
So this Harrison guy was saying SBF's been on the wrong path for a long time, or what?
Yes, he had already had arguments even before the meltdown of Luna with SBF, saying the same thing as other VCs were saying: build a structure, build a board, do this, for compliance purposes. And SBF like, nope. And it got to the point where even SBF started pushing him aside in terms of the communications and the details of what he was actually doing. So it got to the point where this guy resigned in September of last year.
In the nick of time.
Yeah. Either he saw what was coming or he himself, like he said, he saw this. If SBF would not have changed,
yeah,
he wasn't gonna continue, because he knows what that meant on the legal side here in the States, and him being the head of FTX in the United States.
Well, he accused Sam in this thread too of gaslighting, saying, quote, Sam was uncomfortable with conflict. He responded at times with dysregulated hostility, at times with gaslighting and manipulation, but ultimately chose to isolate me from communication on key decision making. I mean, this is your president of the U.S., side of the business, which arguably was the most pivotal, and you're keeping him out of pretty key things.
Right. And he saw it. Brett Harrison started seeing those things.
Because he wasn't an idiot.
Correct. Because even he said SBF was berating a lot of people that came from very exclusive backgrounds or pedigree, and not elite, not from an elitist point of view, but people who knew their business. They know investments, they know exchanges and everything. And all these suggestions under this guy were being sidetracked. And that's one of the problems with the collusion. I'm sure if SBF would have shown him the blending of the assets, client assets, he'd be like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like that day.
He probably would have been out a lot quicker, obviously. And then he actually made it mention of that. So he said that I gradually wound down, finished building, and released the U.S. stock brokerage, and saw FTX U.S. employees through their mid-year reviews. I never could have guessed that underlying these kinds of issues, which I had seen other more mature firms in my career and believed not to be fatal to business success, was a multi-billion-dollar fraud. So making it clear that he had no idea that this type of fraud was going on. And I think the fraud was, the majority of the fraud was taken outside of the U.S., even though there were issues with the U.S. division as well. But that's probably why he didn't see a lot of this coming, because he was kind of isolated from a lot of that.
Correct. He was stateside.
Right.
Versus all of these dealings were beyond stateside. So,
right.
Yeah. It's... well played, sir. Well played. You got out.
I mean, yeah. What timing? Like 2 months before everything just went to shit, he's like, I'm out.
Yeah. So
that's serendipitous. That whole part is serendipitous, but the fact that this does highlight that they were really good at insulating pockets of the company, so there's plausible deniability, which means somebody architected the scam. Somebody got on a whiteboard and planned it all out and was like, hey, we'll have these people handle this batter, these people handle this batter, and then if he falls, these guys won't know about it, and when they're called into court, it'll look more favorable. That's what this tells me.
Yes, and
that's what we're waiting on Ellison and all these other, FTX orgy buddies to come out and say in court, where it really matters. They don't care what SBF is saying on Twitter or on interviews. Like, none of that is official. He's just digging his own grave there. But wait till October when they go to court. Yeah, the whole pool party is going to come out and point the finger at SBF.
They already are. I mean, you already have Caroline Ellison and Gary Wang that pled guilty. And now we got to wait 10 months to kind of hear what SBF's
find out why.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, he's League of Legends and his parents' house in Cali hanging out, man.
And we're going to
hear a laptop.
We're going to hear the sentencing from Caroline Ellison and Gary Wang before the trial even starts, correct?
Can they serve as witnesses if they're sentenced?
Oh, yeah, I would imagine you still could. I guess my next question about all of that would be, what does the sentencing look like? Because Bernie Madoff was sentenced with 165 years in prison, and that was when he was 76 years old, something like that. And yeah, it's just I wonder if we're going to see something similar. I mean, we've talked a lot about how, like, you know, he's got his hands in a lot of pockets, but so did Bernie Madoff. Just to be clear, he was the former chairman of the NASDAQ. Like, he had his and he was in line to potentially have be in a place of authority with the SEC had he not been discovered. So, like, to say that Bernie didn't have the same kind of pull probably isn't true. So I think that
it reached critical mass, though, to the point where it just became unsustainable, and there was a drop in the market that triggered this.
Not just
cascade.
a drop. I mean, once in a lifetime event that took place with mortgages and stuff. But I just wonder if there's going to be some sort of example set, and if it's not SBF, maybe it's one of the other two. But I don't know if we should rule out the fact that maybe Sam Bankman-Fried could go away for a very, very long time.
He'll get a pardon. Trust me.
A pardon?
Yeah, at some point. You watch.
Okay.
He was
as long as they let him play League of Legends in jail.
Yeah.
He's cool with it.
At least via mail.
carry on his vegetarian lifestyle.
Yeah, that's a big cucumber.
Right.
All right, let's get serious here.
Lauren Federer says everyone's forgotten the news cycle has moved on. Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it's important as some of these things continue to get brought up to bring it up ourselves, just to A, we have a record of it, B, that we don't forget about it, because I think it's that important. But I agree. I think that pushing it out to October too also kind of how do I word this? It kind of takes the newness away and that initial shock away by pushing this out all the way to October. So
meanwhile, he tries to win hearts and minds through his Substack messages,
which
and
did
tweets
absolutely
and
nothing.
But you'll see. You watch. He's gonna try to one way or another, and his homies.
Oh, I'm not saying he's not gonna try.
Yeah.
But if the wrong judge is in there for him,
correct.
It could be really bad news for Sam Bankman-Fried. But we will see. Guys, that's our show for today. It's a little bit of a shorter show. We didn't have a whole lot else going on, but we did want to just talk about Bitcoin in general and see where it is all headed. So if you didn't catch that part of the show, make sure you go back and check that out. And if you aren't within our Discord, we can, of course, continue these conversations over there for absolutely free. It's just a community that we're continuing to build there. So we certainly would appreciate that. And let's not forget about birthdays. Today, Lin-Manuel Miranda is 42. I thought that he was older than that. Maybe he just looks older than that to me. But he is 42 years old. Aaliyah's her birthday is today. Rest in peace, Aaliyah.
R.I.P.
She was amazing.
Real deal.
Yeah.
Top Gears, James May is 59. Am I the only one that is a huge Top Gear? I'm sure Brandon is. Are you a Top Gear fan?
Please.
Yeah,
of course. Top Gear's dope.
Yeah. So James May he's 59 today, and Joe Flacco Horn is 37. Albert Pujols is 42, and let's not forget about Danny Ash, who's 55. She's best known for Bend Over, does the Boob Cruise, Tit to Tit 3, Humongous Hooters, Becky's Tongue Bath, Naked in 60 Seconds. Guys, those are your birthdays. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern time to do this all over again. And make sure you're hitting that like button on your way out the door. Until then, keep calm and hodl on.
Have a good one, guys.
Hodl on, Chajir.
Bye.
Bye. Don't fumble.